All right, good morning, good yontiv, everyone. Good morning. Very happy Passover. I got an email a few days ago, might have been yesterday, that it was quite interesting to me. I get all the time these emails about different kinds of petitions. You know, they ask you to sign petitions, and all kinds of political emails, and I'm fascinated by all the political emails. Doesn't necessarily have to be something I agree with. One thing that I find fascinating is that the right-wing emails generally have an argument, a logical argument that makes sense. Why should you sign this? The left-wing, I don't like the term liberal because there's nothing liberal about these people. They're the least tolerant people I've ever seen. But the left-wing emails, they tend to just be crazy. They don't have any argument. They just are like, oh, you know, Trump is bad, and let's defeat him. And like, there's no argument with him. So yesterday I got something interesting. It was a right-wing email that I disagreed with, but they had an argument at least, and I could see both sides. And I specifically didn't sign it because not only I disagree with it, but it's been something that I've been thinking about recently, even before I saw this email, to actually, in a certain sense, encourage. So the email was, sign a petition against humanist, aka atheist, chaplains in the Navy Corps. Now, I'm starting soon a job where I'm going to be a head chaplain in an organization, in a state facility, not in my state, in a different state, and although nearby. And as it is now, I'm also a chaplain in a state facility. And my feeling of chaplaincy is that there is a place for atheist / humanist chaplains. I think it's actually important to have humanist, atheist chaplains, even though I'm a very strong believer in God, and to the point where I feel I try to fulfill what Maimonides says, that we should know God exists, not just a matter of belief, but a matter of knowledge. And although I'm not going to get into that argument right now of belief versus knowledge. But this being said, despite the fact that I'm a believer and I'm a religious person, I am very supportive of the idea of having, within the world of chaplaincy, having humanist chaplains. Why? Now, I know colleges, many colleges have that. I remember some years ago, I was a guest speaker in Harvard, at a conference in Harvard. I was on a panel, and among the panelists was a humanist, what they call rabbi. I'm uncomfortable with this idea of calling an atheist a rabbi. But that being said, his position was also to be the humanist chaplain in general for the college, not only for people of Jewish ancestry. I feel uncomfortable calling devout atheists Jewish. I mean, there's certain people who I know, they call themselves atheists. One friend of mine makes a big deal that he calls himself an atheist, but he's very Jewish. I don't deny his Jewishness, and he's, you know, raising his children to be Orthodox Jews, and he's very proud of that, and he goes to shul, but he makes a whole spiel as an atheist. all right, good for him, maybe he's going through something, and he's working out his issues. All right, I understand. But, but this being said, oh, there's a crane flying over. You don't see those so often. That being said, I do believe that, particularly in government chaplaincy positions, there is a place for humanist chaplaincy for a very simple reason. And there's actually a few reasons why I'm supportive of this idea. Now, the fascinating thing in this email, obviously this was coming from a right-wing, most likely very strongly Christian author sending out this request for people to sign the petition. But the fascinating thing was that he said even President Obama was opposed to humanist chaplains. It's a court case where there was someone who wanted to work as a chaplain in the Navy, in the American Navy, U.S. Navy, and he was a chaplain as a human. His religious identity was secular humanism, or ethical humanism, whatever, but an atheist group. And the author of this petition was saying, look, we need, godly men and women to be chaplains, not not atheist chaplains. And look, even President Obama was opposed to having atheist chaplains. So, to me, before I get to my personal reason that I've been thinking recently, I'm going to be a supervisory chaplain in an institution, God willing, starting really next week. I mean, I'll have training the next 2 weeks, next 3 weeks, and start the job shortly after that. So, with that being said, chaplaincy would be, I'll be in charge of all different religions, both training chaplains and also getting volunteers and so forth. And I felt that it's important. It'll be a prison where I'll be working. And I don't know if I'm going to implement this, but this has been something I've been mulling over, particularly in a prison, that I would like to bring in, even if it's just once a year or something, not all the time, but to bring in a humanist chaplain in a prison for a very particular reason. Although you can extrapolate something similar to this to other institutions, both state institutions and private institutions that have chaplains. Now, in a prison, it's probably more so than other places. My feeling is that a lot of people will use their self-identification as atheists. Particularly criminals will use that. I don't mean, good upstanding citizens, but criminals for sure will use their self-identification as atheists as an excuse to justify antisocial behavior and criminal behavior. And so therefore, there certainly is a place for someone who's going to talk to those people who self-identify as atheists and explain to them the importance of ethics and humanism outside of the realm of religion and outside the realm of belief. Now, I don't mean to bring in a secular chaplain or a humanist chaplain or so forth in order to discourage religious people from believing. Obviously not. But rather, for the non-religious people to give them a sense of ethics and morals and even type of spirituality. We've been discussing how in the hospital where I currently work and hope to be continuing to work as well, albeit on a shorter time basis, that essentially the purpose of this and so forth, of having a chaplain, in addition to my regular chaplaincy work, I do spirituality groups. And so when it comes to the spirituality groups, what exactly is the definition working for a state institution of spirituality? And we define it as whatever makes your life meaningful. And so therefore, you don't have to be a believer to have a meaningful life. But having a meaningful life certainly is something that's important, particularly for institutionalized persons. Because it's so easy to be dehumanized, and spirituality is really what makes one human. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a spirituality of supernatural belief. It could be a spirituality that is totally naturalistic and psychological. Although I personally believe that most of what we call the supernatural is totally natural, part of God's creation. It's just that science hasn't gotten there yet. But it's neither here nor there. If someone, wants to find a sense of spirituality within the realms of what science recognizes today, mainstream science recognizes today, there's really nothing. I'm not saying nothing wrong with it, but it's definitely makes your life better. To find inspiration, to find entertainment, to find and so forth, to find meaning. And not to just feel like you're an animal, but to recognize your value as a human being. And so therefore, for institutionalized people, there can be, obviously the religious people find their spirituality through religion, and hopefully they find their spirituality through religion. There are certain people have other things from religion which are also important, the fellowship, the culture, and so forth, which are also essentially spiritual in the sense that we discussed, based on the state definition of making your life meaningful. But I certainly do see value for those who struggle with belief in things that science has not yet discovered, and that I believe Revelation has given us, revealed religion has given us. But that being said, that's more matters of belief. Certainly, issues of things that are revealed, those are more along the lines of belief than they are along the lines of knowledge at this point. But at some point, I believe they will be recognized. But again, it's neither here nor there. I can respect those who have different views and so forth. But like I said, for institutionalized persons, I think there is an importance in having a sense of ethics and morality. that one gains, even if one is not a believer. And certainly for criminals, people who have a criminal background, people who have engaged in antisocial behavior, and if they use their lack of belief as an excuse for the antisocial behavior, but sometimes certain people will use their beliefs as excuses for antisocial behavior. That's also a problem. And so I feel that as a matter of correction for antisocial behavior, there does need to be a certain level of spirituality, even to the non-believer. Now, whether or not I'm going to implement this into my new job, it's going to depend on the culture of the job, because it's not something that I'm extremely passionate about, but I do think it would be a good idea if it's not currently implemented, and if there's no opposition to it. It would be something that I would consider highly in the prison. And so too in the military, I think there is, although the military itself offers this ethic in a very strong way, but to have the insight for the non-believer of someone who is a trained humanist chaplain, I do believe there is value in that, particularly for the non-believers, to have someone to go to, and just like I don't think, the person who authors this petition is, I'm assuming, is a Christian. I don't think he has an issue with there being Buddhist chaplains, Hindu chaplains. I'm sure he probably recognizes the need for the Buddhist or the Hindu chaplains, the importance of the Buddhist or the Hindu chaplains. And this is really, I think, going to bring out something more important, and also my theory as to why perhaps someone like former President Obama would oppose having humanist chaplains would be as follows. Because to me, as someone who is certainly right of center, but also has libertarian views on many things, I think recognizing atheism as a religion, or as a religious viewpoint, for sure it's a religious viewpoint, would level the playing field. Because right now, for the past, let's say, 50, almost 60 years, atheism has had like an advantage over religion. Meaning in public schools and so forth, even though there are plenty of religious teachers and so forth. But there is kind of this sense that atheism is being forced down people's throats. And if atheism is going to be treated like all other religions on an even playing field and not given an advantage, and essentially the government is recognizing atheism as a religion, so then it's going to go one way or the other. Either there's going to be more welcoming of religious speech in the secular world, or there's going to be the backlash against atheism, then it's not going to have the unfair advantage that it's had for the past few decades. And either one of those to me is a very positive thing, because I'm not saying this, my encouragement of atheist and humanist chaplains is not to encourage atheism, but to encourage ethics, morals, humanist values. I do believe that most religious people are humanists, just that we're religious humanists, and that these secular humanists are secular humanists. I do believe that we believe in the importance of human beings and support the success of human beings. I think much of the secular world today is frankly not humanist. It's really anti-humanist. Because one aspect that I feel that's really anti-humanist is placing human beings and animals on the same level. It's not truly humanist. I don't believe, for example, PETA, that if we could compare slaughtering chickens for food consumption to murdering human beings in concentration camps during World War II. That's not humanist to make that comparison. That is anti-humanist. It's not just as a Jewish person, and because there were so many, half of the victims of the concentration camps in World War II were Jewish, possibly more than half. That's not the only reason why I find this to be distasteful. But because it's, to me, quite shocking and unhumanist, and it's something really, the Nazis, prided themselves, Hitler loved dogs, they prided themselves on animal rights, and trampled on human rights. So, and they put animals on a higher level than humans. They humanized animals and dehumanized humans. But if someone is teaching why it's important even for the atheist to be ethical, to be moral, to treat the fellow human being with respect, and if that is going to lessen antisocial behavior, for sure that's a positive thing. It's a step in the right direction. And if we can level the playing field and essentially have atheism as a recognized religion by the U.S. government, that is going to either lower the influence of atheism in America or raise the influence of traditional religion in America. And I think that's going to be a positive thing. So that is why I am not signing this petition, because in reality I can only see positive outcomes from having atheist chaplains, as long as, just like all other chaplains, have to follow certain rules. They're not proselytizing those who are of a different faith. They're not radicalized. They're not spewing hatred or bigotry of other religions. But rather that atheism is just another religion among the various religions in the world. forms, including some organized forms, like these various societies for ethical humanism. Now, New York State has long recognized the Society for Ethical Humanism as essentially being on equal footing with other religions. They allow, humanists, I don't know how you want to refer to them, they're pastors, ministers, leaders, as being legally qualified to sign a marriage license, to officiate a wedding, just as religious leaders can. And being, like I said, someone who's essentially libertarian, I think that's fitting and proper in America. And like I said, it essentially makes an even playing field. Between the various, religious groups, and so too, I would tell someone who's considering signing this petition, or the author of this petition, to ask yourself, how is a secular humanist chaplain any different than if you're a Christian, let's say? Why do you view a secular humanist chaplain different than you view a Buddhist chaplain? And also, Buddhism is an interesting religion because it's, the questions of theology are really not that important in Buddhism. So you could be a Buddhist atheist and still be a totally good Buddhist. And you could be a monotheist Buddhist, and you could be a polytheist Buddhist, and it really has absolutely nothing to do with being a Buddhist. And yet we recognize Buddhism as a religion, even though it doesn't really have the essential trappings of, Western religion, of the Abrahamic religions that are, strongly monotheist and theist. So essentially, I think that this is not the fight the battle to fight. That being said, I remember some years ago, I should just, talk about something that I expressed my opinion on when I was a rabbi in Congregation Kol Emes, senior rabbi in Congregation Kol Emes in Richmond, Virginia. Had the distinct honor of being on the executive board of the Jewish Federation. They're all rabbis, all congregational rabbis were on the executive board of the Jewish Federation. So I would attend the Jewish Federation meetings, and they would discuss what kind of lobbying the Federation was involved in. And one thing that they were lobbying for, against, however you want to define that, was to prevent chaplains, Christian chaplains, from praying in the name of Jesus. And they wanted to prevent it. And they wanted the chaplains should only say non-denominational prayers. wasn't clear to me whether that was in a setting that was an interfaith setting specifically, or whether it was all the time. Now, if that's all the time, that is certainly something that I find to be just an extremely bad taste, because the fact of the matter is, no, you have, if you're a chaplain, you're going to have a Christian service. If you're a Christian chaplain, a Jewish service, you're a Jewish chaplain, Muslim service, you're a Muslim chaplain, and so forth. That's first. But secondly, even if it is an interfaith setting, a Christian prays in the name of Jesus. I remember I was sitting in an interfaith discussion group where they were saying, well, there were Christian pastors who were saying, well, theologically, if they recognize it all to be the same, so then they're all, whatever name they use, that's, to me is a bit more nefarious, but on the other hand, theologically, but it doesn't matter to specifically mention his name or not, from a Christian perspective. But the answer I have for that is there are many different types of Christians, and for some Christians that's important, for some Christians it's not. And we live in a society of free religion. But there's something else, are we going to say that, Jewish chaplains shouldn't say something in Hebrew, or Muslim chaplains shouldn't say their prayers in Arabic, or, are all the chaplains just going to have to get up and say something that's totally non-denominational and has nothing, because we don't want to offend anybody, and so then, therefore, we're going to have to God altogether, and whatever. They listened to me, but they still voted the way they voted, the Jewish Federation of Richmond, against Christian chaplains praying in the name of Jesus. Doesn't really make much sense to me, and I voiced my opinion. Maybe I didn't voice it as eloquently as I am now, but I was quite shocked that was their take on it. Although it wasn't surprising, but it shows the lack of thought, the lack of logic that particularly, left-wing Jewish organizations, lack this thought, this logic, and so forth. That being said, being someone who believes in liberty, I am supportive of there being diversity as well, as long as it's not, and the thing is, yes, and it doesn't necessarily have to be equal. Diversity does not demand equality. For the most part, I think there is a certain level of democracy in the diversity issue, that the minority should be represented in a diverse way, but the representation should be more or less based on supply and demand, those type of, I remember every now and then I was ministering at VCU, I would stop to daven at the interfaith prayer room that they had there at Virginia Commonwealth University. And I brought a friend of mine there one time, and he said, well, this is, even though they call it an interfaith prayer room, it's obvious that this is a mosque. And it's primarily a mosque. And it's not really interfaith. And, well, the fact of the matter is, if Muslims are praying 5 times a day, and they need a place to pray, yeah, they're going to be using that more than, Christians who maybe go to church once a week. And to make it to church, the church is walking distance to the college. And how many Jews at VCU are praying 3 times a day? I know maybe 1 or 2 who prayed 3 times a day, when I was there. So, and at U of R, maybe also 2 or 3, during all of, 5 years I lived in Richmond. So, but how many Muslims are praying 5 times a day? Probably several dozen. So, it's totally fitting. Maybe probably even over 100 Muslims at VCU who were praying 5 times a day. So obviously, it's going to get more use by Muslims than it's going to get used by Jews and Christians or other groups. Similarly, here on the thruway, there's a rest area. I think they call it meditation spot or something. I don't remember exactly what they call it. This damn truck. Sorry, excuse my language. I'm trying to get away from this truck. So anyway, who is stopping in the summer to pray? There's going to be Orthodox Jews. And so it's even though it's designated for any use, but it's the majority of the use is going to be, on the road to the Catskills in the summer, there and back. It's going to be for Orthodox Jews who want to get together down with a minyan, on the highway. And it's open for anybody, and that's who's going to use it more than anybody else, and there's nothing wrong with that even if it's exclusively used by Orthodox Jews and nobody else uses it, people say, well, what's this, how can you have a village like Kiryas Joel that's all Hasidic? And the answer is, anybody can move there, just nobody wants to, except Hasidic Jews, and that's fine, It's not discriminatory. The irony, look, the Clintons live in Chappaqua in Westchester. And that place is like 99.999% white. I guess except for Bill, because he was always bragging about how he was the first black president. And which would probably make Obama the first woman president. Especially since Sarah Palin would often comment about how Obama didn't have any cojones. Again, excuse my language. But and how we needed a president with, so. But all of this being said, essentially this is. More or less what I wanted to bring out, to discuss. This video went much longer than I thought it would. A lot of it was because I paused a lot, particularly because of that truck. But what do you all think? Am I making a good argument? And does it make sense what I'm saying? Maybe I would like to hear the argument after. If someone listened to my whole argument, what reason would there be not to have secular humanist chaplains in, let's say in the U.S. Navy? Is there a good argument not to have the secular humanist chaplains? Tell me in the comments below if you have, or if you agree with me, if you have any other insights as to why you think there should be. I think my argument's pretty good. I don't know. Again, it's not, and it's specifically not because I want to encourage atheism, but because I want to encourage atheists to be ethical and moral. And I know atheists who are ethical and moral. Sometimes they're more ethical and moral than religious people or self-identified atheists. But is it unfair? Is it bigoted of me to say that, I don't think it is. I think it's actually quite accurate that essentially, non-believers, engage in antisocial behavior is the fact that they don't believe in anything a contributing factor. And so therefore, would there be a gain in encouraging there to be secular humanist chaplains? So let me know in the comments below if you agree, if you disagree, if you have other insights or views. Perhaps you yourself might be a secular humanist chaplain. I remember a fellow who I met at Harvard when I spoke there. We were on the panel together. And the question, the real big question, I think, when it comes to secular chaplains is, what are you focusing on in your chaplaincy ministry? Are you focusing on, I don't think secular humanist chaplains are sitting there like disproving religion, although maybe that's part of it. I think they're, are they engaging as much in apologetics? Is it an apologetic ministry? I mean, an apologetic ministry really doesn't have a place. A religious apologetic ministry really also doesn't really have a major place in chaplaincy. I mean, there is a certain place for apologetics in ministry when you're talking to like-minded people. But the thing is that the secularist is not going to be offended by someone. They shouldn't be offended by someone having a different view. They just, the way that the religious person would. So, there's a lot what to discuss as far as this question of secular chaplaincy and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. And personally, I am quite convinced that it would be a very positive thing to have secular chaplains, as long as they have to follow the same rules of all other chaplains. And also, to be honest, like I said, for the person who is a secularist, who is the non-believer, I think having the experience of road closed. Where does this go? of quote-unquote church, I think it has a positive role, meaning, people who are non-believers, but they get together and they sing songs and they tell stories and listen to sermons and so forth. I think there's a value in that, and having fellowship, it brings me back to how Billy Graham, some people were upset at him about this, but he would encourage everyone to go to church. Didn't matter, and he said, go to your church. Meaning, if you're a Christian who only goes to church on Easter and Christmas, Billy Graham would say, go to your church every Sunday, or as often as you can. And so too, I would say the same thing to the Jew who just goes to shul and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and has a Pesach Seder and lights Hanukkah candles. If your temple, even if it's Reform, and they have services every Friday night or every Saturday morning or whatever it is, go. All the more so, of course, if it's Orthodox. But even if it's Reform or Conservative, go. Go support your local synagogue. And be active in your synagogue, and you're going to get something out of it. Even if what you're going to hear I disagree with, personally, you're going to get so much out of it, and they're going to be happy that you came. And you're going to, and so too, I would say, same thing for the non-believer. First of all, if you find a church or synagogue that you feel comfortable with, perhaps a more liberal one, and you feel comfortable there, and it gives you something, even if you're questioning your faith, even if you're devoutly non-believing, but you're going to get something out of the fellowship of the community and so forth. Why not? What do you have to lose? It's going to make your life better. Again, even if you really don't believe in it. I mean, I personally do believe in my religion. But, having that experience of being in church, synagogue, mosque, whatever, yeah, there could be negative things from it also. But I think, essentially you're going to have more positive. And if you don't like your particular church, you could fish around, find one that works for you. Find the church, find the synagogue that works for you. I have my synagogue that works for me. I like it. It has the right level of diversity for what I'm looking for, and the right level of, my style of Judaism. So, look into this. Think about it. And consider it. And I think you're going to be quite happy. And the fact of the matter is, you might be surprised that the synagogue that's so different from yours, or the church, whatever, you might be more comfortable there than you would imagine. A synagogue like mine, which is a strictly Orthodox synagogue, the synagogue where I attend, and I have somewhat of a title, assistant rabbi. Officially, this I would tell you, if you're in our area, check it out. You might actually quite like it. You might be quite surprised. I just want to go to the grocery. It looks like it's closed. Let's see if they're open. Well, thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, and all the best. Sorry I rambled on so much, but thank you for watching.